I'm Riley Quinn, 23, a first-generation biomedical engineering grad in Chicago. I rent a tiny studio over a bakery that opens at 4 a.m. My flaw? I over-prepare for love, thinking perfect grades, perfect timing, ideal everything will finally make my parents proud. It never did. At my graduation, my parents leaned in and hissed, "Failure," under the brass fanfare, seconds before the dean took the mic and announced a name that froze the hall. Before I tell you what happened next, please consider liking and subscribing. It genuinely helps. Have you ever been torn down at the moment you needed family most? Tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I'm reading them tonight with leftover cake and shaking hands. The university rented the United Center because our class was enormous. Tassels swung like metronomes. Camera flashes strobed through the air. The brass ensemble polished each note until it glittered. My row smelled like hairspray and hope. I had taped the same sticky note inside my cap that I'd used on every final. "You did not come this far to come this far." My parents sat on the aisle. Third section, row H, mother in a navy sheath, father in the same suit he wears to weddings and warnings. They had flown in late, missing the hooding ceremony, arriving just in time to critique my posture. "Smile smaller," Mother whispered. "It reads desperate on camera." Father's jaw tensed. "Make sure you shake with your right." "Don't trip," I swallowed. "I won't." He scanned the program. "You're not listed as a speaker. After all that work?" I tried to make light of it. "Only 2 student speakers." He tapped the paper, sighing. "Then what was the point of the all-nighters?" Across the arena, a kid in my lab waved his phone at me, beaming. I waved back and forced my mouth into the practiced, TV-friendly smile, the one that says I am fine even when your insides are splintering. The provost welcomed us, voice booming. Slides of the class of achievers scrolled, startups launched, patents filed, clinical hours logged. I recognized friends and clapped until my palms stung. When the camera passed my face on the jumbotron, Mother leaned in, voice sugar-edged. "Don't cry," she murmured. "You haven't earned it." I blinked hard. I thought of the 3 jobs I juggled: night shifts at the hospital makerspace, tutoring calculus, and weekend barista. I thought of the scholarship essays typed at 2 a.m., the grant proposals rewritten while my roommate snored. I thought of bioreactors, sterile benches, pipettes lined like silverware at a dinner I never seemed invited to. Names began to roll. Caps bobbed. People screamed with joy for their kids. When my row stood, my heartbeat tried to outrun the drumline. I squeezed my card, the phonetic spelling of Riley Quinn in the dean's careful script, and stepped toward the ramp. That's when Mother tugged my sleeve, nails cold against my wrist. "Before you embarrass us," she said, "remember, you still don't have a real job." "I have offers," I whispered back. 2 labs, 1 industry." "Offers," Father muttered, eyes on the stage. "Not outcomes." The drumline hit a crescendo. I should have let the music carry me. Instead, their words stuck like burrs to my lungs. My turn was 5 steps away. The line moved. The dean nodded at each graduate, eyes kind, smile warm. 100 yards of blue carpet and then peace. "Riley Quinn," the reader announced. I walked, chin level. Right hand ready. The dean's palm met mine, firm and steady. Camera. Flash. I took the diploma cover that held a single sheet of vellum, the real degree waiting somewhere backstage like a secret. The crowd's cheer lifted and fell around me, general, polite, not personal. On the way down the ramp, I looked for my parents. Mother's mouth made a line. Father's hands stayed clasped. No smile, no clap. Just assessment. When I reached their row, they leaned in. Maybe to say we're proud. Maybe to finally see me. Mother's breath brushed my ear. "Still no honors cord," she noted. "You aim so high and land so ordinary," Father added, almost kindly, which hurt worse. "Don't let this distract you from tomorrow." Real life starts when the applause stops. I felt the floor tilt. "I graduated magna," I said. "The cord is under the gown for the hooding." "You missed it." Mother's brows lifted. "Excuses." They straightened as if nothing had been said. The brass swelled. The camera panned. The next name boomed. I sat very still, diploma cover hot under my palms, heartbeat loud in my ears. My sticky note felt childish now, like a Band-Aid on a fracture. I told myself I wouldn't cry. I told myself I didn't need them to say we're proud for pride to be real. But I had wanted it. God, I had wanted it. Halfway through Z, the provost returned to the podium. The screen zoomed in, catching the fine powder of dust floating in the spotlight. "Graduates," he said, smiling, "stay with us for 2 final presentations. First, the Dean's Medal for Transformative Research and Service. It goes to one student whose work did more than chase grades. It changed lives." My brow shifted, whispers buzzing. The award was mythical, a once-a-year thunderbolt. The recipient got a stipend, a lab placement, and a door into a room most of us only knew by rumor. Mother exhaled through her nose, amused. "Well," she murmured, "at least you'll see what excellence looks like." My cheeks burned. I stared at the stage, convincing my pulse to behave. The provost gestured to the jumbotron. Photos flickered. Volunteers in clinics, engineers in Uganda, students teaching coding to girls after school. The brass softened to strings. People quieted as if the room itself leaned in. The dean stepped to the mic, papers in hand. His tie was crooked. He didn't seem to notice. "This year," he said, eyes scanning the sea of faces, "our recipient balanced 2 research appointments, led a free community prosthetics clinic out of our makerspace, and founded a mentorship pipeline for first-gen students." My lungs forgot how. A hand brushed my forearm. The kid from my lab, Leo, leaned over, eyes huge. "Riles," he whispered, "is that you?" Mother scoffed softly. "Don't be absurd." The dean smiled toward section 3, row H, the exact geometry of where I was sitting. "And when supply chains collapsed," he continued, "they designed a low-cost, FDA-cleared neonatal ventilator attachment that has already shipped to 6 community hospitals." Leo's hand squeezed. "It's you." "Oh my God!" Father's hand tightened on his program. Mother looked bored. "Marketing," she sighed. "They always oversell." The dean lifted the envelope. "Please stand," he began. My legs tingled. The world tunneled. "Don't pass out!" "For the Dean's Medal for Transformative Research and Service and the concurrent Allen Fellowship, awarding full funding and lab placement for the next 2 years." Mother's lips parted. For the first time all day, her expression broke. The dean looked straight at me. My name formed on his mouth. Riley. The brass punched back in like a heartbeat. The arena inhaled. I felt my parents tilt toward me at the same time, Mother's nails grazing my sleeve, Father's breath catching as if he could rewind what he'd just said and make it less cruel. My hands shook. The diploma cover slid against my sweat-slick palms. What I remember next isn't the music or the cameras or Leo shouting, "Go!" It's the quiet inside my head where a single thought landed. "Stand up." I pushed to my feet. Slow, certain. Mother whispered, "Riley." "Don't you dare make a show of this," Father muttered. "Be humble." On the stage, the dean raised his hand, waiting for the hall to fall quiet. He smiled directly at me, like he'd been waiting months to say what came next. He opened the envelope. His mouth shaped the syllables. The arena held its breath. To understand what that moment at graduation meant, you need to understand what came before. My family was never loud about love. I grew up in a suburb outside Milwaukee, in a house where silence was the default setting. My mother, Caroline, was an accountant who measured affection the way she measured columns, only if the numbers balanced. My father, Martin, ran a small auto shop, and he believed work spoke louder than words. If you wanted approval, you earned it with output. There was I, the middle child, and my 2 bookends, an older brother, Sean, and a younger sister, Tara. Sean was the golden boy, football captain, prom king, full ride to business school. Tara was the baby, bubbly, artistic, the kind of person who walked into a room and collected attention like lint. And me? I was the smart one. Except in our house, that wasn't a compliment. It was a job description. Every Christmas Eve, we gathered around the oak table my grandfather built. Sean's trophies lined the mantel. Tara's paintings, framed by Mom, crowded the hallway. My achievements, robotics competitions, debate medals, science fair ribbons were shoved in a shoebox under my bed. Mom's voice would ring out, sharp but practiced. "Sean, lead the toast." He'd grin, raise his glass, and the table would erupt in applause. Tara would share her latest sketch or song, and the room would coo like she'd hung the moon. When it was my turn, the script always shifted. "Riley, how are the grades?" I'd say, "All A's." Dad would nod. "Good, keep it that way. No applause, no warmth, just expectation." I didn't notice the cracks until high school. Sophomore year, I won a statewide science fair with a prototype prosthetic arm built from recycled bike parts and 3D printed joints. My mentor called it graduate-level work. I thought maybe this time my parents would beam. Instead, Mom frowned at the certificate. "How much did that printer cost?" Dad muttered, "Could have used your time helping in the shop." That night, I overheard Sean in the kitchen, smirking. "She's just trying to prove she's better than us." Mom didn't disagree. I lay in bed, staring at the shoebox under my mattress, the certificate sticking out like it was ashamed of itself. That was when I first realized, in my family, my success didn't make me shine. It made me suspicious. When I got into Northwestern on a partial scholarship, I thought it would change everything. I thought they'd finally see me. At orientation, my parents didn't even tour the campus. "We'll see it at graduation," Dad said, handing me a folded check for books. Sean joked, "Don't turn into one of those nerds who forget their family." Tara hugged me tight, whispered, "I'm proud of you." But her eyes flickered, half admiration, half warning. Like, even she knew the price I'd pay. In college, I worked 3 jobs to cover what scholarships didn't. Nights, I mopped hospital floors, breathing in the sharp sting of disinfectant until my eyes watered. Mornings, I brewed lattes for bleary commuters who never learned my name. Afternoons, I tutored calculus in the library. I told myself it was temporary. That one day, I'd look back and see it all as the price of freedom. But every time I went home, Mom would ask, "How much debt now?" And Dad would ask, "When are you getting a real paycheck?" Not once did they ask if I was okay. The winter before graduation, Sean brought home a fiancé with perfect hair and perfect timing. Tara announced she was applying for an art residency in New York. The spotlight swung toward them, as always. Me? I mentioned the neonatal ventilator prototype I'd been working on. Hospitals had started inquiries. Mom stirred her tea. "Babies, that sounds fragile," Dad grunted. "Will it pay?" Sean laughed. "Relax, she's always chasing projects. We'll see if it lasts." Their words should have slid off me. By then, I should have been numb. But that night, in my childhood room, I stared at the ceiling and whispered, "What if it never counts?" Graduation was supposed to be the proof. The one moment I couldn't be dismissed, where tassels and degrees and fanfare would drown out their doubt. I thought even my parents couldn't twist that. But sitting in that arena, diploma cover in my lap, I realized I had miscalculated. Because their silence wasn't accidental. It was armor. And when it cracked, when they whispered the word failure, I knew the danger wasn't just indifference. It was that they wanted me small. Looking back now, the signs were all there. The quiet dismissals, the subtle digs, the moments when I should have realized my family didn't just undervalue me, they resented me. It started small, like paper cuts. Invisible to anyone else, but enough to sting. I came home after pulling an all-nighter at the lab, presenting early test data for my ventilator project. My eyes were bleary, but my chest buzzed with pride. The lead researcher had said my design had potential for mass production. At dinner, I tried to share. The hospital board reviewed my prototype. "They think it could save preemie lives," Sean snorted, stabbing his steak. "Babies and machines? Sounds like you're playing with Legos." Tara giggled, covering her mouth. "Sean, don't—" But Mom cut in, calm and sharp. "Riley, is this going to put food on your table? Because hospitals don't run on dreams, Dad added. You've been at this for years. When are we going to see an actual paycheck? I whispered. It's not about money right now. It's about impact. Sean leaned back, smirking. Impact doesn't pay rent, the table laughed. Except me. The next morning, I found Tara sketching by the window, her notebook balanced on her knees. She looked up. You know they don't mean it like that, right? She said softly. I forced a smile. Sure they don't. But then she added, it's just, you make everything so intense. Maybe if you weren't always trying to prove something, they'd back off. Her words cut deeper than Sean's jokes, because Tara meant them. Later that week, Mom cornered me in the kitchen while I was washing dishes. You know, Riley, she said, lowering her voice. Not everyone has to be extraordinary. Sometimes ordinary is enough. I froze, suds dripping from my hands. Are you saying I shouldn't try? She sighed. I'm saying your ambition makes the rest of us feel small. Her honesty knocked the air out of me. I had never thought my drive could be seen as arrogance. But maybe that's what they'd believed all along. The night before the ceremony, we had a family dinner at a local restaurant. Sean raised his glass, grinning. To Riley, he said, finally finishing. Took long enough, the table chuckled. Even Tara smiled nervously. I forced a laugh, but my pulse thudded. 4 years, Sean, same as you, he smirked. Yeah, but my degree actually matters. People want business majors. Science nerds? Not so much, Mom didn't correct him. Dad didn't stop him. Instead, Dad muttered, just make sure tomorrow doesn't embarrass us. The words hit me like ice water. I whispered, embarrass you? Mom touched his arm, as if to hush him, but her eyes stayed fixed on me. And in that silence, I understood. They weren't coming to celebrate me. They were coming to measure whether I was worth the seat they'd taken in the arena. That realization sat in my stomach like a stone. But the next day, when they leaned in at my graduation and hissed the word failure in my ear, it wasn't just cruelty, it was confirmation, because for years, they hadn't been waiting to be proud of me. They'd been waiting for me to fall. Graduation day. The moment I had worked toward for 4 years. The culmination of sleepless nights, missed parties, calloused fingers from typing, and coffee-fueled marathons at the lab. I slipped into my gown that morning with trembling hands. The fabric felt heavy, like it carried the weight of every doubt I'd swallowed, every sneer from Sean, every backhanded comment from Mom and Dad. But beneath it all, I felt proud. I had earned this. Walking into the stadium, the roar of voices hit me. Families filled the bleachers, holding signs, balloons, and flowers. I scanned the crowd and spotted mine. Sean is in sunglasses. Tara is leaning forward. Mom and Dad stiff in their seats. No posters, no smiles, no pride, just presence. As I lined up with my classmates, tassel brushing against my cheek, I told myself their silence didn't matter. My work mattered. My degree mattered. When my name was called, the stadium clapped politely. I walked across the stage, heart racing, diploma folder in hand. For one shining moment, I was untouchable. Then, as I passed the row where my family sat, I heard it. Dad leaned forward, voice low but sharp enough to slice. Still a failure, Sean chuckled under his breath. Hope the dean doesn't say otherwise. I faltered mid-step, heat rushing to my face. My peers were smiling, their families cheering. And mine? They were cutting me down in the one moment I'd prayed for support. At the podium, the dean cleared his throat. Graduates, before we conclude, I have a special announcement. My pulse thudded. The dean reached into an envelope. The stadium hushed. He scanned the crowd. Then his eyes found me. Today, he said, we honor one student whose innovation is already changing lives. A ripple of surprise ran through the audience. I froze, every nerve burning. Was he? The dean smiled. This student has developed a neonatal ventilator prototype now under review by 3 hospitals. She has been awarded the University Medal for Innovation. Gasps, cheers, applause exploding like fireworks, and then my name. The entire arena erupted. My classmates turned, clapping, some even shouting my name. A spotlight hit me, bright and blinding. I clutched the diploma folder, throat tight, as the dean gestured for me to join him. My feet carried me back to the stage, legs shaking, vision blurry. Behind me, I felt it. My family's silence, heavy, bitter. Mom's face had gone pale. Sean looked stunned, mouth hanging open. Dad sat rigid, jaw clenched, but they didn't clap, not once. Afterward, in the crush of hugs and congratulations, my classmates celebrated with their families. Balloons floated, cameras flashed, fathers lifted daughters off their feet, mothers wept. And me? I approached my family, diploma in hand, medal around my neck, heart aching for the words I had wanted all my life. Sean smirked first. "So you got lucky. Doesn't change who you are." Dad's voice was colder. "A medal doesn't erase years of disappointment." Mom crossed her arms, whispering so only I could hear. "You embarrassed us by acting surprised. You always make it about you." Her words hit harder than any blow. I had just been honored before thousands of people. And still, to them, I was nothing. That night, lying in bed with the medal on my nightstand, I stared at the ceiling, numb. Because in that stadium, the truth had been confirmed. No achievement would ever be enough for them, and the more I succeeded, the more determined they seemed to break me. What I didn't know yet was that their cruelty had only set the stage for my revenge. The medal on my nightstand glowed under the dim light, a cold reminder of what should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, it felt hollow. Every time I replayed the dean's words, the applause, the spotlight, it was followed by Dad's mutter, Sean's smirk, Mom's whisper. Their voices drowned out the cheers. I had been honored in front of thousands, and still, my family managed to make me feel like nothing. When we got home from graduation, the silence was suffocating. No celebratory dinner, no flowers, no champagne. Just Mom sighing about traffic and Sean complaining the ceremony had been too long. I sat at the table, diploma folder still, in my lap and whispered, "Aren't you proud? At all?" Sean scoffed. "Proud of what? You made a toy." Dad didn't look up from his phone. "Don't push it." Mom finally spoke, her tone sharp. "Stop fishing for attention. Your sister's wedding is in 6 months. That's what matters." The air left my lungs. 6 months from now, Tara's wedding would eclipse everything. My medal, my degree, my name. It would all be forgotten. That night, I cried until my pillow was soaked. The kind of crying that shakes your ribs, that makes you feel emptied, scraped raw. I thought of every late night I'd spent in the lab, alone, believing it was worth it. Believing one day they'd look at me and see someone worthy of love. But all I saw in their eyes was contempt. At 2 a.m., I sat on the floor, back against my bed, knees pulled to my chest. I whispered, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I am a failure." The words stung like acid, but part of me believed them. The next day, my phone buzzed nonstop with texts from classmates. "Congrats, genius. Drinks tonight, right? You're officially famous." I stared at the screen, unable to reply. Their joy for me only deepened the emptiness. Because my own family, the people who were supposed to celebrate first, had erased me in real time. I ignored the texts, stayed in bed, skipped the party. By the 3rd day, I hadn't left my room. On the 4th day, Tara knocked softly and slipped in. She sat on the edge of my bed, her perfume sweet and sharp. "You should eat something," she murmured. I turned my face away. "Why? What does it matter?" She hesitated, then whispered, "I'm sorry they're like this." Her words cracked something in me. I turned back, tears brimming. "Why don't they love me, Tara?" She didn't answer. She just reached for my hand, but it was shaky, uncertain. like she was afraid of being caught showing me kindness. When she left, the silence felt heavier than ever. That night, I lay awake, staring at the metal. My chest ached, my mind numb. I thought about giving up, about disappearing into a life so small they wouldn't even notice me. And then, a memory surfaced. Dad's voice sharp at the ceremony. Still a failure. But what had happened seconds later? The dean had announced my name. The crowd had cheered. Thousands of people had seen me succeed, whether my family wanted to admit it or not. I realized something. They didn't get to define me. Not anymore. Their cruelty didn't erase my work. Their silence didn't cancel my applause. And for the first time in days, my chest loosened. I whispered into the dark, voice shaking but steady enough to hear myself. I won't stay broken. What I didn't know then was that the very thing they mocked me for, my toy, my so-called failure, was about to become the weapon I'd use against them. Because my invention wasn't just a project. It was leverage. And soon, they'd regret underestimating me. The morning after I whispered, I won't stay broken, something in me shifted. Not overnight strength, not some magical burst of confidence, but resolve. Quiet, simmering, dangerous. If my family wanted to brand me a failure, I'd let them. For now. Because failure has a way of disarming people. They stop watching, they get careless. And that's when you strike. I started small, listening, observing. At breakfast, Dad muttered about the funding gap for Tara's wedding. The venue was exclusive, the flowers imported, the guest list endless. He sighed. We'll need to move money around. Sean snorted. She's worth it, unlike some people. I kept my eyes on my cereal, but inside, I filed it away. Funding gap, money movement, pressure points. Later, when Mom thought I was out, I overheard her on the phone. Yes, the down payment went through, but the bank needs verification of the deed. Don't worry, Rachel's room was cleared. My chest tightened. They'd sold my childhood room to cover wedding costs. The very walls that had witnessed my late-night studying, my tears, my dreams. Gone. But I didn't cry, not this time. I smiled. Because they thought the deed was out of my reach. They were wrong. No one survives revenge alone. My first call was to Maya, my best friend from engineering school. She answered on the second ring, voice bright. Finally, the ghost speaks, I whispered. Maya, they sold my room, to fund the wedding. Her tone hardened. That's sick. I need your help. You had me at hello. Together we spent nights digging. Maya scoured property records, cross-checking transfers. I reached out quietly to the dean, who had connections to the local press. The story was simple. My family humiliated me publicly while selling off my inheritance for a single night of glitter. But facts matter. Proof matters. And soon, I had both. My invention, the so-called toy. In the lab, I'd designed it as a prototype for real-time projection. A portable device that could display images and videos in 3D, no screens required. For months it had collected dust in a drawer, dismissed as impractical. Now, it was my sword. Imagine this. Tara's wedding, hundreds of guests, every eye on her. And then my invention illuminates the room with the truth. Their whispers, their insults, the deed, their betrayal, played out in midair for all to see, a cinematic exposure, one they could never erase. But before the grand reveal, I needed to test my tool, quietly, safely. So I brought the projector to Maya's apartment, loaded it with a clip I'd secretly recorded, Dad's voice at the graduation. Still a failure. When the words shimmered in the air her coffee table, Maya's jaw dropped. This is terrifyingly perfect, she breathed. Rachel, this isn't just revenge. This is annihilation, I smiled for the first time in weeks. Exactly. The opportunity came faster than I expected. 2 weeks later, Tara invited me, reluctantly, to her bridal shower. A glittering affair at a downtown hotel. Gold balloons, champagne fountains, endless laughter. Mom hugged Tara tight. "You deserve everything." Dad raised a glass. "To the future Mrs. Bennet." Sean smirked across the room at me, whispering to a cousin, "Wait till they see how useless she really is." I sat quietly, hands folded, face blank. But in my bag, my projector hummed, loaded ready. I didn't use it that day, not yet. But as I watched Tara open gift after gift, basking in applause, I knew the stage was being set. Her wedding wasn't just their obsession. It was their Achilles heel. The bigger the stage, the harder the fall. And I was done playing small. That night, back in my room, I laid out the projector, the deed copy Maya had pulled, and the audio files I'd collected. I whispered, "This is it." The end of being quiet. Because once Tara's wedding day arrived, I wasn't just going to attend. I was going to take control of the entire room. The week leading up to Tara's wedding was a blur of champagne, dress fittings, and endless chatter about flowers and favors. To them, I was invisible. And that invisibility? It was my weapon. At the rehearsal dinner, I slipped in late, unnoticed. The restaurant glowed with fairy lights, the smell of roasted lamb and wine filling the air. Tara clinked her glass. "To family who support dreams, mine especially." Laughter rippled, but Sean leaned over to a cousin and whispered, "Unlike Rachel, no dreams worth funding." My fingers tightened around my bag. But instead of rage, I felt something new. Control. I excused myself to the back hallway, pulled out my projector, and quietly connected it to the restaurant's Bluetooth speakers. One click. That's all it took. A voice filled the room. Dad's. Clear. Cold. Recorded at graduation. Still a failure. The room went silent. Heads turned. Tara blinked in confusion. Sean nearly dropped his fork. I slipped back into my seat, wide-eyed, pretending to be shocked. Mom stammered, Who played that?" The restaurant manager rushed to check the system, baffled. Tara forced a laugh. "Technical glitch. Ignore it, but I saw it. The flicker of unease. The way the room shifted. For the first time, doubt had entered. The next morning, I took another step. Smaller, sharper. On the group chat Tara had made for bridesmaids and family, I dropped a single message. Anonymous number. No name, it read, "Check the deed." Within minutes, Mom called Tara in a panic. "Don't worry, sweetheart, the papers are safe." But Tara snapped, her voice rising. "Why is someone messaging me about deeds?" Sean muttered, "Probably Rachel. But here's the thing, proof beats suspicion." And they had no proof. I stayed silent, sipping my coffee. At brunch later that day, the atmosphere was cracked. Tara's laugh was louder, brittle. Mom kept glancing at her phone. Dad ordered drink after drink. "Sean?" He glared at me like he could peel the skin off my face. Finally, he leaned across the table, whispering, "If this is you, stop." "You'll ruin everything," I whispered back. Funny. That's exactly what you all told me I wasn't capable of. Ruining anything. His jaw clenched. For once, he had no comeback. The real test came at Tara's final dress fitting. The boutique was filled with lace, silk, and mirrors. Tara twirled, glowing under the lights, while Mom dabbed tears. "You're the perfect bride." I stood in the corner, arms folded, silent. Then, as Tara admired herself, my phone buzzed. Maya had sent me a file. It was short. An audio clip from the bridal shower. Tara's voice dripping with disdain. "She's pathetic. Honestly, having Rachel here ruins the energy." I didn't even want her invited. My lips curled into a smile. I pressed play. The words echoed through the boutique, bouncing off mirrors and silk. Tara froze mid-spin. Mom gasped. The assistant blinked, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Tara whipped around, eyes blazing. "Who did that?" I tilted my head, voice soft. "Maybe the walls are thin?" The assistant excused herself quickly. Mom's face turned pale. Tara's hands trembled as she clutched her gown. It was only a snippet, a taste, but the damage was done. That night, I lay in bed replaying their faces, the cracks, the stutters, the fear. For weeks, I had been the quiet one, the erased one, the failure. But with every strike, I felt taller, stronger. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about balance, making them feel what I had felt, humiliated, exposed, small. But as satisfying as those first wins were, I knew one truth. They were nothing compared to what was coming. Because Tara's wedding wasn't just a party. It was her empire, her crowning jewel, and I was about to shatter it in front of everyone she loved. The morning of Tara's wedding, the sky over Houston was cruelly perfect. Blue, cloudless, and smug. I dressed slowly, pulling on a navy dress, simple, sharp, nothing like the glittering gowns my family favored. My reflection stared back at me in the mirror, eyes steady, shoulders high. No more hesitation, I whispered. Today, you're not the forgotten one. Today, they remember your name. The venue was obscene, a rented mansion on the edge of town, all marble staircases and chandeliers heavy with crystals. Tara had gone all out, white roses lining the aisles, champagne towers glistening. A live string quartet playing as guests arrived. I slipped inside quietly, unnoticed among the 100 guests. At the front, Mom fussed with Tara's veil. Dad checked his watch impatiently. Sean barked orders at the catering staff like he owned the place. They all looked untouchable, but that was the beauty of masks. They crack under the right pressure, the music swelled. Tara appeared, radiant in lace, her smile wide enough to split her face. Guests gasped and clapped. Sean dabbed his eyes dramatically. I stood at the back, phone in hand, waiting. The officiant began the vows. Tara repeated words about love and loyalty, her voice trembling with fake sincerity. Sean sniffled loudly. And then, as the officiant asked for objections, I moved. I pressed play. The speakers, hidden in corners of the grand hall, crackled to life. At first, the sound was faint. Then louder, clearer. Tara's voice filled the room. I didn't even want her invited. Rachel ruins everything. She's pathetic. Gasps rippled. Guests turned, scanning the room. Tara froze, eyes wide, lips parting in horror. But it didn't stop there. Next came Dad's voice, cold and familiar. She'll never be anything. She's still a failure. Mom's voice followed, sharp and mocking. Don't waste money on Rachel. Tara deserves it all. Every word echoed through the mansion, amplified, undeniable. Guests whispered, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The bride's smile cracked. The groom's face darkened, his hand slipping from Tara's. And then, the final blow. An image projected across the pristine white wall. The deed. My deed. Signed, sealed, notarized. My name. Proof I owned the family home. The one they had promised Tara as her wedding gift. The crowd erupted. Tara's bouquet hit the floor with a thud. She spun toward our parents, hissing, "You said it was mine." "You promised," Mom stammered, pale. "We didn't think," Dad barked. "Turn that off." "Turn it off." But it was too late. The damage had spread like fire. The groom stepped back, glaring at Tara. "Is this true? You mocked your own sister? You lied about the house?" Tara's face contorted. "It's not, Rachel's lying." But the proof was glowing on the wall. The voices were still ringing in the air. The audience was no longer on her side. Sean lunged toward me, eyes blazing. "You did this. You ruined her day." I lifted my chin, voice calm but cutting. "No, Sean, you ruined me years ago. This is just the truth." Guests began leaving, shaking their heads, whispering about cruelty, betrayal, and greed. The string quartet stopped playing. The groom walked out, ignoring Tara's desperate calls. Mom collapsed into a chair, hands shaking. Dad shouted at the staff, demanding someone fix what couldn't be fixed. And Tara? She screamed. A raw animal sound that echoed through the hall. her veil slipping from her head as she collapsed in the aisle. I watched from the back, steady. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. I felt powerful. But even as the guests fled, as Tara's empire crumbled in real time, I knew this wasn't the end. Because when families fall, they don't fall quietly. And mine? They were about to fight back. The day after Tara's wedding that never was, Houston buzzed like a city with fresh gossip in its veins. I didn't even have to check my phone to know the story had spread. The looks I got at the cafe, the whispers in line at the grocery store, confirmation enough. But when I finally scrolled, headlines: Houston heiress humiliated at altar. Family feud explodes at wedding ceremony. Clips of the audio leak were already on TikTok, spliced with captions like, "Imagine your family calling you a failure at your graduation." Then this happens. My humiliation had gone viral. But this time it wasn't mine. Tara didn't leave her apartment for days. The groom, now ex, released a statement through his law firm. "I cannot move forward in a marriage built on lies and cruelty." The boutique that had designed her gown posted cryptically, "We value honesty in all our brides." The post went viral with laughing emojis. Her perfect image, carefully cultivated, shattered overnight. And though I knew it was cruel to feel it, I did feel it. Satisfaction. Mom tried damage control first. She called relatives insisting I had doctored the recordings. But technology doesn't lie, not when everyone could hear their voices plain as day. Uncle Mark cut her off. "You called your own daughter a failure on tape. What kind of mother does that?" Dad retreated into silence. He stopped answering calls, stopped showing his face at the club. Pride had been his uniform, and now he wore shame. For once, it wasn't me being whispered about at family gatherings. 3 days later, they showed up at my door. Mom's face was pale, lips trembling. "Rachel, you destroyed us. You ruined Tara's future." I folded my arms. "No, I revealed what you already ruined. I just gave it a microphone." Dad's jaw tightened. "You think you're clever? Exposing family like that?" I stepped closer, voice low but steady. "Family doesn't call their daughter a failure. Family doesn't sell her home behind her back. You broke us, not me." Mom's eyes filled with tears, but whether from shame or rage, I couldn't tell. That night, lying in bed, I realized something strange. I wasn't giddy. I wasn't celebrating, I was calm. For years, I'd carried the weight of their dismissal, their cruel words. I'd thought revenge would be a fire, roaring and consuming. But in reality, it felt like water finally cooling a burn. Quiet, necessary, healing. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A message from Tara, it read, "Are you happy now? You've ruined my life." I hope it was worth it. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. For a moment, I almost replied. Almost explained that she had ruined me first. Instead, I closed the app. Some messages don't deserve answers, but as I drifted to sleep, another thought lingered. I'd torn down the masks. I'd taken my power back. But now that the truth was out, what came next? Because sometimes the aftermath is more dangerous than the betrayal itself. The week after the wedding felt like living in a house after a storm. Branches scattered, windows cracked, but the air was clear. For the first time in years, I could breathe without the weight of my family's judgment pressing on my chest. I walked through the family home one afternoon, running my hands over the walls. This place, my so-called childhood failure, was mine now. Not because they gave it to me, but because I fought for it. Every creak of the floorboards, every scratch on the doorframe where I'd once measured my height, it felt reclaimed. "Not haunted anymore," I whispered. I was never less. You just couldn't see it. People asked me if I forgave them, if I'd ever let Tara or my parents back into my life. The truth? Forgiveness wasn't the goal. Clarity was. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need to chase their love. I had built something stronger, my own sense of worth, untouchable by their cruelty. And that was worth more than any apology they'd never give. Weeks later, I got another message from Tara, just 3 words. I hate you. I smiled sadly. Because hate was proof she still thought of me, still measured herself against me. But me? I didn't measure myself against her anymore. I had my own yardstick now. Betrayal breaks you. Humiliation can hollow you out. But survival rebuilds you stronger than before. Revenge wasn't about destroying them. It was about reclaiming the parts of myself they tried to erase. And in that sense, I'd already won. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. And tell me, would you forgive betrayal like this or walk away forever? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.